Good afternoon, Naz. How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you, Jazz.
And you, Naz. Been a while. It's actually quite sunny over in Sharjah, so I'm
Yeah,
lucky.
it's sunny here in Manchester as well, but we don't have the luxury of lots of sunshine that you have. So we have lots of rain, but you're getting that as well. So
no. Thanks for coming on, Naz. I just as we open this next podcast, I know we briefly spoke on this in the past about future jobs, how AI will affect future jobs. Where do you see AI in the next 10 years in terms of job creation, job retention? How do we empower the latest youth to say, look, there's going to be X amount of jobs now, and then in about 5-10 years, these jobs will change and everything will look towards technology and how data will drive it. Now, if we take a little bit of a history back, I mean, I'm a little younger than you, but obviously,
a few years,
yeah. So only a few years, but not by much. You could probably recall when you were at school, careers and how it would, how it's.
Well, Jazz, we back then. I mean, we're talking about the 70s mainly. We had a careers officer. You had nothing online. There was no such thing. If you wanted to know what was going on, you had to either go to the library and read what you could find there, or rely upon the expertise of a careers officer who themselves were relying upon what was in the library. So it was, there was no guarantee that whoever was providing you with the information had all the information, and there was no guarantee that they understood what pathways were available to you as an individual. I wanted to be a lawyer, and that was relatively straightforward as a profession. You go to do law school, then you qualify, and then there are various paths available to you there. But if you wanted to be in a non-professional, not usual professions, accountancy, law, medicine, etc., if you wanted to do something outside of that area, it was a real struggle. You probably had no role models. I had no role models. I had nobody. I didn't know any lawyers. The only lawyer I knew was Perry Mason on television. The only doctor I knew was the GP I would visit if I was ill. So you had no role models, nobody that you could look up to or ask questions of. In our families, particularly those of us who are children of immigrants, and people from working class backgrounds, they had nobody around them that they could go to for mentoring or coaching or support. So there was a lot of self-sufficiency and trial and error. And you would more often than not, you would make mistakes. And hopefully you had the opportunity to learn from those mistakes. All of that has changed now. Now, if anything, it's the exact opposite. You have more information than you need. And what you need to do, and this is perhaps the conversation we're having, is to be able to sift through that to find what is relevant to you. Because you can drown. If you think about it, back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, there was a puddle and we'd walk in the puddle. Now there's an ocean, and we're trying to find what we want to find in that ocean, and it's really, really challenging.
No, I mean, that's somewhat similar scenario to mine, and I'm late 70s, early 80s when at school. Same scenario. You finish school and you're a career teacher, and you were brought up in Birmingham, I'm in Coventry, industrial town. The only place they could really say was, right, there's this factory and that factory. These are your options. There was
I was lucky, very lucky. I was bright, and bright academically, and so I didn't have it was much easier in that regard. My siblings, they didn't have those opportunities. They had what you just described. There's a factory over there. There's an industrial estate over there. These are the jobs. Forklift truck driver. Stacker. These are the jobs available, and that's all. And it was our good fortune that my father had sort of entrepreneurial spirit and set up his own company. But if he hadn't done so, I imagine that we would have done what most people did, which is to work literally the whole word of working class is that we were the working class, and all we were able to do is earn enough to feed our families, to put a roof over our heads. We had no other ambition and no other opportunities or aspirations. It's different now. The young now have higher expectations.
Yeah.
They quite rightly. I mean, the world is a different world. I was looking at my phone. I saw a picture of myself from about 2000, so about 25 years ago, and I had one of those brick phones.
Yeah.
And I think I was technologically way advanced having a brick phone. Most people still had the landline phone that you had to ring and
the rotary dial.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the rotary dial, all that. And it was only 2006-07 when we first had the first Apple phone, which enabled you to, you didn't need a keyboard. I remember I had a BlackBerry, so you'd be tapping a keyboard on a little device. Then Apple came up with the smartphone, and that's all happened in the last 18 years. And so for the bulk of my life, more than 40 years of my life, none of those things were available to us, and we had to navigate our journeys through trial and error and the experience of others. And people often say to you, and I'm sure they say to me, oh, you're pioneers. You were the first brown person in my university. You were the first brown person in law school. Blah, blah, blah. We never saw it that way, but yes, we were. Now, when you go to an accountancy school or law school, find the white person. It's almost become reversed because people can see the benefits of those careers. And so I think it's important to recognize that the world has changed, but that makes it a little bit scarier because you always think, I'm talking about my children and young people generally, that there must be something else. We had nothing else. There was that factory, there's that industrial estate, there's your professional career. Now they think there's 1,000 roles that could exist that they feel they may be able to occupy. And how do they get there? What do they need? What skill set do they need? All of these questions which we didn't have to answer.
Well, the interesting thing you yourself just mentioned that you were quite bright, and then you obviously had siblings that went to work and earned and made money for the family to keep a roof over it. How did they feel about? I mean, did they see the potential in yourself and then say, "Look, Nazir, we want you to study"?
100%. I mean, I'm so grateful to my siblings, to my father, to my mother, all of them. They literally left me alone. But again, remembering that, my day was school, madrasa, library, school, madrasa, library, school. It was really exactly that, and they left me to it. Whenever they, I remember if they were having problems or concerns about where the money was going to come from this week, I was never part of that conversation. Let him focus, and it is a school uniform every year, so we need to buy him a school uniform every year. They really made sure that I did not have to worry about the things that they were worrying about, so I could focus on whatever potential I had. The sad thing, of course, is that other people had that potential, but never got the opportunity. There are plenty of people I know who would, maybe if they weren't as bright as me in the subjects I was bright in, they were bright in other subjects, and they just didn't get the support that I guess I had.
So going, it's now difficult, like you mentioned, how we've got this wealth of sort of knowledge now, and tech at our fingertips, in effect. So we've got a wealth of information. It's going to get difficult to actually predict what type of jobs there will be in the future. What type of jobs do you think can you envisage?
I would hope actually the mundane jobs will no longer exist. This is where I think if you think about the first industrial revolution, which you and I from the Midlands, it started in the Midlands. First worldwide industrial revolution started in the Midlands and in the north of England. That's where steam and all that came from. And there were jobs that involved young kids going down mines. There were jobs that involved young kids going up chimneys to sweep them. There were jobs that involved the most horrific experiences, where many of them, unfortunately, didn't survive into adulthood. They went. So if we think about it in those terms, that's exactly what we have to deal with here. There will be jobs that no longer are needed, but they are not jobs that are particularly satisfying. One of my brothers is a taxi driver. Was a taxi driver, and with autonomous vehicles, in a few years' time, who's going to need a taxi driver? And that's tens of thousands of people who currently have a particular role that may not have a role in a very short space of time. Those people who update data and you give us all information, that won't be necessary anymore. So many secretarial roles, administrative roles won't be needed anymore. They'll change. There'll be different jobs, but the jobs where here's a document, would you put that into the computer? No, Scannet is there. It doesn't need a human touch, so to speak. I think what clearly people are fearful that what they currently do and what they hope to do for the rest of their lives may not be available to them. This is where we need to have this earnest conversation that we're having today, and other conversations, to ensure that people can understand that this is a world of opportunity. Just because one door is closed doesn't mean every door is closed. In fact, many, many, many more doors will open for you. So I think we need to recognize that. So I think there's a lot of menial administrative roles. Some of the roles that we're familiar with will no longer exist, but they're the jobs of the future. I'm pretty sure that my children will be doing jobs in 10 years' time that don't even exist right now. So who thought that there'll be a software developer 30 years ago? And now everybody's a software developer. Who thought you could be an influencer? 10 years ago. Now loads of people are influencers. So there's all sorts of roles now that didn't exist 10 years ago, in the same way there'll be other roles that exist in 10 years' time. The trick, however, is to be ahead of the game.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Don't wait and don't expect it to come over the hill on a plate. You could actually take advantage of the current, uncertainty to create some certainty for yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think people need to shouldn't be scared as well. Artificial. I remember a few months ago, because somebody said to me, a newspaper rang me up and said, "Do you think that we need judges in the future?" Surely all a judge does is assimilate information received and then issue a judgment. Well, surely under AI, you could have an AI tool sitting there, not physically, and Jazz, you make your submissions about your case. The opponent makes submissions. The judge has got this AI has got all of this. Here is the judgment. And I remember this is what people were saying. And then I actually asked ChatGPT, can you see AI replacing judges? And ChatGPT said no, because the one thing that I can't bring you is the human element. And so people need to recognize that won't be gone. AI is a tool to make things easier for you.
Well, like you've just mentioned, ChatGPT, Naz, with your help, we've managed to make a chatbot which is based on ChatGPT for the Ministry of Justice in Uzbekistan. Now, that aside, that same model of ChatGPT that we've actually developed, we could use that for training lawyers or people in the legal profession.
We shouldn't brush over the Uzbek thing, because what the Uzbeks have done. We had if you go to any country, you have something like citizens' advice. So the member of the public can go into an organization and say, "Could you advise me on something that's affecting my life?" 99.9% of those questions have been asked a million times. People are asking the same question over and over again. So what we've been able to develop for the Uzbek government is, for the Uzbek nation, is this ability to have an AI process, which means the bulk of questions can be addressed without the necessary human interaction, because they are the same questions that are asked all the time. And it then means that what limited resources you have can focus on the more difficult ones, or the novel questions, or the ones that haven't been addressed before. So it enables the institution, as it enables the Uzbek government, to refocus its resources to where it's needed, and take them away from where it doesn't need to use human resources.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's all. So we've looked at sort of the jobs of the future. How do we get the youth now? I mean, we've got a schooling system that probably doesn't look, me and you went to school and it was a career teacher. I'm sure that's obviously changed. I haven't been back to school for a long time and seen what sixth formers do as such. So, I mean, I'd like to go back. That's not a bad idea. What can we teach kids? I mean, how do we get kids now to think, look, world is changing, tech's changing, jobs are going to change. How do you get
I'm chair of a further education college in the UK. I'm also a chancellor of the University of Manchester. So I'm still, thankfully, surrounded by young people, and they are much more self-sufficient. They don't necessarily wait for somebody to tell them how to do things. They can find out for themselves, which is a real plus. They're also, I think, keener on internships, apprenticeships. They're much keener on being mentored and being coached. There are more opportunities for being mentored and coached. We can provide them. We do. I think we have interns at BICAL, don't we? So people come in and spend a bit of time, work in the work environment, and then they can find out for themselves where their passion lies and where their skills lies. So I think that the future is about people doing, a job for life won't exist anymore. I don't think. The idea that, as our families and historically people went into a job at 18 or 21, whatever it is, and they were there for 50 years. That's not going to happen anymore. What will happen is that people will have segmented lives, and they may have portfolio lives. So you may have 2 days a week where you're doing X, 3 days a week where you're doing Y, and you're going to have to manage that, and should be able to manage that, and with proper support, etc. So I think people are going to be thinking around that. We've also, post-COVID, had this experience where prior to COVID, people went into the office 5 days a week, and wherever it was. Now 2 days a week into the office, 3 days working from home or working in a hybrid way. All of that means that the landscape for the employee has changed. Therefore, from your perspective, from a young person's perspective, put your hand up. If you want to try something, the opportunities are there to try something. You shouldn't see it as a begging, because you're not, because the institution, the organization that will learn from you and you'll give something back. But also they're looking for talent. Talent doesn't just go to the best universities and the best schools. It comes from all sorts of places. Many people who are the most talented leaders in this world probably never even went to school, or never left school with any qualification. So talent spotting requires giving people an opportunity that they wouldn't have. So there's more of it. Therefore, that puts more pressure on you as a young person, because you are expected to apply here and go there, and it won't be provided to you on a production line. You just go with the flow. You have to divert to see where the flow is going, but I think that means more opportunity. That means more collaborative working. That means more apprenticeships, more internships, more learning on the job. Not seeing a role as the be-all and end-all. You may have other opportunities at the same time as this opportunity. It means finding teams that you can work in, but also being able to work on your own, and managing whatever workflows you have from maybe different sources, and also keeping abreast of technology, because in 5 years' time there'll be something even more phenomenal than what we have right now. So you to have scan the horizon to see what else is coming, in order to place yourself so that you don't get wrapped up or miss the boat, to put it properly.
No, I agree with that. I mean, unfortunately, COVID did. I think there's a generation that possibly might have missed out.
I think it's delayed. I don't think anybody's missed out. I think people have delayed their development by a year or two, definitely.
Right.
But maybe that's not a bad thing, because I remember, you leave school at 18, you go to university, you leave university at 21, you go to law school. It was almost like a pretty, it was done for me. Maybe if I had a couple of years out in all of that, or a couple of years delay, it would allowed me to pause and do some reflective stuff and do some training, internal training, rather than just go with the flow. So it has its pluses and its negatives.
So I suppose it would have given the people a chance to actually take reflection on themselves and say,
exactly. What do you want? Yeah, what do you want to do? And have to think about it. Don't just do what your family say you should do or your friends around you are doing. Have a think about where you think you can add the greatest value, what you can do in terms of the greatest impact, and what will give you the most passion. What will you get the most out of yourself?
I mean, you obviously see it in Manchester with the students and so forth, for how they're growing themselves. We look at industry, and in effect, Manchester, with all the research and the startups that you've done, you're creating new jobs all the time.
All the time. All the time. I mean, don't forget, Manchester University has 25 Nobel Prizes, The most recent one was for the discovery of graphene, or the graphene, which is the thinnest substance known to man, and woman. So research is key. You can't simply assume that we found the best already. There'll be something better. So it's being part of that process. And the other day I went to Jodrell Bank, the observatory in England, which was the first radio observatory, the biggest radio observatory in the world. It's a UNESCO heritage site, and I climbed up it, and I suffer from vertigo. Right? So I climbed up this 300 feet into the dish of this phenomenal thing, and it's 70 years old, and it's still receiving. It receives radio waves from billions of light years away. What it reminded me is how small we all are.
Right.
How little you are. And therefore, unless you reach out, build networks all the time, guys, you will always remain small. You can be big by building those strong networks. And by that, and that means that if you don't know the answer, somebody around you will. And you're going back to your point about research. I might be very good at this, but I don't know how to get to there. How do I find out? Well, you can Google it. Yeah, you can go on AI or whatever. But the best option is to talk to somebody who's an expert in that area. And I'm delighted to tell you, Jess, I'm a right fraud. I'm sat with the global world leaders, experts in everything. And if I want to know the answer, I just ask them directly.
No, exactly. There's no shame.
No shame at all. And in fact, the best thing to say is, I don't know what I'm talking about. Can you tell me? And they tell you. And I think the more we can do that, the more we are one community. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We're human beings, and we should look after each other and make sure that we all develop at the same speed if possible.
No, cool. I mean, you have all these companies that, when we order our food, we go Uber Eats and that collecting this data. So they're obviously in 5 years' time, there's going to be a new way that they might, a new job creation of using that data. So
100%. 100%. I'm totally with you. I don't even know what jobs will be here in 5 to 10 years' time, but I do know we're moving at an extraordinary rate. We're developing at an extraordinary rate, and therefore you should not take things for granted, number one. Number two, you should always want to develop yourself. Doesn't matter how old you are. There's some students at university who are in their 80s. I'm blown away by these people who, I thought by the time I'm 80, that's the last thing I want to do is study again, But these people realize that they, there's an intrinsic beauty of just learning. It doesn't, even if it doesn't mean that you get another job out of it, or that you are somehow get, a higher pay rise, whatever. They want to learn because there's so much more to learn.
So much more to learn. Right, look, I know you're busy, because obviously you always are. Look, thank you so much for that.
No, it's a real pleasure that I'm an ambassador, a Baikal ambassador. It's absolutely, I'm a real massive supporter of what you and Baikal and Raj and others are doing. Your extraordinary footprint that you have for the size of your organization blows me away. That you are, working on a global scale, and you're always thinking about the next big thing and want to be at the front of that and to support and assist governments, NGOs, organizations all around the world. And I'm delighted to be part of that.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Mark can edit it. That nearly took us at about 25 minutes.
But there is everything we need to get out is out.
Well, I tell you, Naz, you're good. You can get
practice. Practice.
Practice. But
I do it so many times, Jazz. You have no idea. I must do 150 speeches a year. So it's really straightforward.
Really?
Yeah.
What about the TV channel thing?
That's happening. Everything is happening. I'm literally living my life in 2-hour chunks. 2 hours about this, 2 hours about that. But look, it's a privilege. I wake up in the morning knowing that what I'm doing today is what I want to do, and when I go to bed, I've got another day of that ahead of me. So, it's a real privilege to be in that position.
Wow. Never mind.
So, have you saved it?
Yep, all done.
Good to see you, Jazz. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Go on, I'll speak to you soon. Thank you, mate.
Bye.
Bye.